every 6 months.
Come out, just doing it all at once.
Yeah. Okay.
It's hard enough to get everybody here once a year, never mind twice a year.
I was worried I was missing emails somehow. Yeah.
All right. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 3:03, Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. This is the Other Post-Employment Benefits, or Opeb, Trust Committee. We're going to pass over item number 2, the minutes. We're waiting for one more member to arrive. So I'll just go into my handouts real quick. The 3 pages in order. So what I provided is a balance sheet and an operating statement as of June 30, 2023. This is the same thing, and it's in the town report, same information I give to the auditors. Just wanted to let the committee have the statements, the financial statements for year end. June 30, we had just over 4.3 million in the trust. The town contributed 955,000. We had investment income of 352,000. So net surplus of 1.3 million. And then the third handout is just a continuation of what I hand out at every meeting. Shows the town contributions from inception to date. So this one is through December 31st, and the cumulative earnings. So as of December 31st, 2023, and you hear the same thing from Bartholomew, we're at just over $5 million in net assets. We have accumulated almost $1 million in earnings since 2012. Any questions on that? Then we'll move on to the presentation by Bartholomew and Company.
What'd you do?
Wasn't me. I didn't move. Is it this one?
That one away from, like, just turn it more towards that here. All right, that's good. Let's give the world that. I have it turned down pretty low. I'll get you in your seat and then we'll figure it out from there. All right, give me 1 second.
So we need that thing that comes up, blue thing that says, please excuse us, we're having technical difficulties.
Testing, 1, 2, testing. Everybody can hear us?
Yes.
No feedback? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for letting us come today and have our annual review meeting. We have Kathleen Glowacki from our internal investment management team and Brian Gemros from our outside investment advisory team. Good to see you all. Happy New Year. Almost soon, happy tax day, right?
Already starting.
Last time we met, we reported on fiscal calendar year or fiscal year and calendar year 22, 23, respectively. And good news is we had a stronger 23. So we have much better news to report. In March, we changed your portfolio from up to 70-30. Looking back, it was a great time to do it. And you're going to see that in the performance today that we're going to present to you. So with that said, I'm going to turn out and pass out. I'll leave you copies. Now remember, we always like to give you through December 31st. And actually, I'll give you an economic update too. Oh, this is the colored copy. You can have, I can shred those copies, same information. In colored version, it looks better if you want. Sure. Economic, and give me those, I'll shred those. Same exact material for the record. Thank you. Just in colored version. So we like to show you the last full month on record. Okay, take those, shred. Same exact copies, just colored. There you go, sir. Okay. Okay, let's start, if we could, with the portfolio review, ending December 31st, 2023. Ending, oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Ending balance of $5,071,503.30. I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen. We're going to go over the performance review for you.
All right. So on page 2, you can kind of visually see how the allocation has changed. As Brian said, the biggest thing to keep in mind is that in March, we moved up the risk profile. So increased the risk to 70% equities and 30% bonds. And so I say that because if we look at some performance, particularly against some 70-30 benchmarks, just remember, you were a little more conservative prior to that. But looking big picture on page 3, on the left-hand side, we have since inception performance. So this portfolio opened in February of 2012. And the activity through December 31st of 2023. And so you can see what's been contributed, just over $4 million, realized and unrealized gains, dividends and capital gains. So really bringing you to the total gain over the whole life of the fund of just under $1 million. So that ending balance of just over $5 million at this point for rounding. And the annualized return here, this is a net of our fees as well, 5.39%. So year over year, 5.39%, which is really great. And now that you've increased the risk, and we have private equity, we have real estate, other alternatives, it's really kind of exactly where we typically recommend OPEBs to be. So hopefully over the long term, taking on a little more risk, you have annualized returns a little bit higher than that, but that is still really quite good. And if you look at the right-hand side, this is just the fiscal year so far, again, as of 12/31. So all of that same information, 2023, even in the latter half, was really quite strong. So the portfolio, again, just for a few months, up 4.82%, which is very different from 2022, but so far, very good. Yeah.
And in that last, the first 6 months of the fiscal year, you need, as you were looking at your statements, if you were looking at them on a month-to-month basis, most of that performance came in November and December. November and December. It was a tough third and beginning of the fourth quarter. And then once the Fed signaled that they were going to stop raising rates and they're going to start looking at lowering rates, things started performing very well. So remember, that's a 4.82 for that 6 months, not annualized, just an increase of almost 5% for that 6 months. Okay? Next page.
On page 4, this is where we have your portfolio against some 70-30 benchmarks. So again, we changed it in March, so even really the year to date isn't fully 70-30, but it gives you an idea of what the performance can kind of be compared to. So your portfolio is that top line. Over the year of 2023, the portfolio is up 13.35%. And again, since inception, all the way to the right, you can see 5.39. And the most applicable benchmark we compare to is that third one down that says 55-25-20, equity, bonds, and liquid alternatives. In this portfolio, you have a sleeve of alternative investments that really are there to help smooth out the ride, help add to returns, help really just behave differently than the traditional markets. So I point that out because that's really what we're kind of positioned most closely to. So on really the quarter to date basis, that's kind of the best representation we can give. You have some context there. This portfolio, the last quarter of 2023 was up about 8.5%, really quite strong, and the most applicable benchmark up a little over 8%. So, but having said that, OPEB is long-term. We don't really, want to scrutinize, at least here, quarter to date, even year to date performance. This is double digits. It's really, really strong. We don't get overly excited about that, just like we don't get overly depressed in 2022. These are just the way market cycles happen. And so my team on the investment side, we're just in here rebalancing, and which I'll talk about. But, as you can see, really great performance over 2023. And then on page 5, you can see that even more clear. These are just all of the calendar year performance returns. And so you can see, of course, 2022, this portfolio was down 15.8%. We got, of course, a lot of questions, not from this group, but in, other communities or other people who really, that's a time that tells you maybe you want to pull out of the market and go to cash or go into treasuries, right, that are paying a lot right now. But you would have missed out on a 13.35%. So for OPEB, we never recommend trying to time the market. It's a funny thing to do, but with the ups and the downs, things really work themselves out. So you can see 2023 was really quite strong. And then I'll just point to the right hand of this page, just to kind of show the difference of 2022 and 2023. So you can see the third to last one starts with MSCI. That's all stocks, all domestic and international stocks. And so in 2022, they were down about 18.4%. And in 2023, up almost 22%. So just a very, very different experience. And same with bonds. If you look right one more time, in 2022, bonds were down in this particular benchmark, down 13%, and have smoothed out now that the Federal Reserve has stopped raising rates. Hopefully that's the end of, that, meaning the economy is normalizing, inflation continues to go down, employment's really quite strong still, so things are what they call soft landing. So the economy is kind of settling down, is kind of where we're at this point. So some context there. I know it's a little bit into the weeds.
And Kathleen, just before you move on to the next page, I just want to point one thing out. When we moved this portfolio from 65-35 to 70-30, we didn't close out the account, open a new account. Mm-hmm. So all of your benchmarks are going to be off until it flushes through for 5 years, because it's looking at this portfolio. The benchmarks are going to look at this portfolio like it was always invested as a 70-30. That was not the case. So we can't say, hey, for the first 4 years, we've had this at a 65-35. Now for the last year, almost year, we've had it at 70-30. So please keep that in mind. So if you're trying to compare apples to apples right now, it's very difficult, but as the performance continues, you'll be able to see that. And the 1 year, slightly, if you take a look at the year to date, year to date was through December 31st. That's a 13.35, and the best benchmark was 14.03. Keep in mind, ours are net of fees. Those are gross of fees. Those do not include the fees. So if you wanted to get a better handle on what this was, you would add your 40 basis point fee to that. Actually, I think you're a little slightly lower, but just worst. I'll look at that in a minute if you want. But worst case, put 40 basis points management fee to that, and that's a 13.75%. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay. Next page, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And page 6 and 7, these are really all of your holdings. And so just without going into any of them specifically, what we do with Opeb is we have a very diversified portfolio. So we have U.S. equities, international equities, and bonds, both. And then again, that sleeve of alternatives. So Sutton was an early adopter of private equity, which is great. I'm sure Parker will talk about that as well. And so that's really, really helped you again in those really tough times. I know I didn't talk about it, but in 2022, the only parts of our portfolio or any portfolio that did better were alternatives or cash, right? Which is not a true investment over the long term. So those have done really, really well. And then on the bond side, one of the kind of changes we've made is when we look at our bond portfolio, in different times, we may have some higher yield bonds, meaning owning some lower credit quality types of bonds, which can add a lot of value. But in this most recent time frame, if you know your treasuries and money markets, they're paying you a lot. And so one of the things we've done is really just kind of get out of some of those riskier types of bonds and get into, I probably mentioned this in the last meeting because we've been doing it for a little while, get into some of those more stable, guaranteed by the U.S. government, paying you, quite a lot. And that's a good way to be, especially if we go into a slowdown in growth in the economy. And so really all of that to say, my team, we're not making market timing decisions because this is Opeb. We don't want to do that. We'll be wrong. Anyone will be wrong. But we try to look at what's going on in the world and make some changes on the margins if we think it's appropriate. But really being 70-30 with private equity and real estate, that's kind of the best case for our recommendations. So all looks good. So I'll pause there with all the talking.
Any questions or concerns? Sometimes people say, well, geez, is now a good time to lower the equity risk? And the answer is no. Parker can confirm that when you can certainly lower your equity risk right now to 60-40, but your unfunded liability is going to go up tonight. You're going to keep, actually, we were just at a joint meeting with Parker, who's your new actuary, and it's interesting. They were much more conservative at a 75 portfolio, 25% stock, 75% bonds. They shifted it from a 70-30. Actually, in this case, it was probably 60-40, and they lowered their unfunded liability over that night by $20 million. Now, bear in mind, they had a lot more funded, but still, don't get stuck on the numbers. Just look at the percentages. Significant impact. So, make sense?
So let me ask a question or a statement. I'm not sure which. If we really don't care about our unfunded liability, because it's all over the place, it's a bunch of assumptions, would it make sense, I'm not suggesting this, but would it make sense to jump out of the stock market and into bonds, more stable stuff? Because at this point, stocks are probably going to start coming down. At least that's my feeling. I mean, they've never been this high, the market, and it doesn't have much place to go but start coming back down again.
So it's a good question, and if you were an individual getting close to retirement, the answer is yes. These funds do,
That's a personal question, isn't it?
that's really a personal.
No, but Brian said,
Sorry.
soon
No,
as
no, that's
if
okay.
we change it, our unfunded liability goes way up. But if we don't care, because it's just a number on paper, I know you don't want to hear that, and I've probably never said that before either. But since it has changed so much over the years, depending on what discount rate is used, and our number has been all over the place in the last 5 years, does it make sense to change our risk right now and then wait for when the market comes back down, we jump back in again?
So if you knew the bottom of the market, sure.
It's market timing. I
Yeah.
don't like to do this.
And let me know when that day is, I'll join you. But going back and being serious, if it was your personal money and getting close to retirement, that's a different story than OPEB being money in perpetuity, 30, 40-year money. It's a different story. And you also keep adding in every year for your annual, I'm sorry, I was going to call it annual required contribution. They call it something different now. But you're adding in money every year, twice a year in this case, in your story. So if and when the stocks go down and you're still adding more money in, you're buying more shares per dollar, and then when it rebounds, you're going to have more shares per dollar, and you're going to have more value. So if it was a personal question and you're getting close to retirement, the answer would be, let's look at that, and probably yes, it makes sense. But in these cases, where these are 30, 40-year monies and a large unfunded liability, stay the course, because it's a well-balanced portfolio with private equity, real estate. It's not a true 70-30 portfolio that doesn't have any alternatives. If you strip out the alternatives, the equity to bonds is more, if you stripped out it's probably 60, well, actually it's this, I'll tell you. Hold on. You don't know where I'm going, I see. But it's more closer to 55, 25, 20. 55% equity exposure in the public markets, 25% bonds, and then 20 in alternatives is really what you're at, Mr. Chairman.
And where I thought you were going with that, which is, comes up and is kind of the flip side of what you said, is we've heard from some communities, why don't we just go 100% in equities? Because if we don't really care and we're not using it and it's perpetual, who cares if it's down 30% next year? So there's kind of I guess it depends on personality, or if you're more of
Yeah, why are
a,
you trying to smooth the ride when you're talking about a 30-year ride? I
right.
mean, you know, it's a roller coaster, up and down, and
Well, one good reason would be, you know, we're not the only community. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of communities talking about potential overrides in the next year and a few years after. You know, our Opeb earnings are a great source of paying for a year or two, if we're in a jam, retiree premiums. Not touch the principal, but if we need to rate it all, we've got $1 million in earnings so far.
And we can still do that, you know,
We
we can,
hate to lose any of that.
sorry, Tim, I
Well, that,
apologize.
you know, all of a sudden, when things start to go back down. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not supporting it. I'm just, just opening up discussion.
yeah, I'm not a voting member, but I'm all in favor of, this is a fairly aggressive portfolio in my opinion, but, I mean, to me, we're investing for the long term, not for next year. And, obviously if that situation happens, we have to look at all of our accounts, but to me, this is fine. I appreciate what appears to be a low service cost for the services of your firm, which is wonderful. I don't know that you hear of 40 basis points all that much as an admin fee, so I think we're on the right track.
Is there any way you can make any comment about how we look compared to other communities that are we
As far as fully invested, Parker's going
Being-
to answer that.
funding, our 70-30 split, all those things, money that we're putting in on a yearly basis?
Sure,
How do we compare?
sure. So Parker, I can't take the credit because Parker just gave us this slide and he has it, so.
All right, well, we can defer it to, we can defer that to Parker. Yeah, well, we can-
Do you want to do it? Can we interject? Is that okay? I mean, I got the information from him. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Or we can just wait, it's fine.
As far as, I guess, the investment, what we can speak to is the 70-30.
We can speak to the
Breakdown.
70-30, absolutely. And then we're going to let Parker speak to
Oh, you can talk.
what percentage funded are you to your peer community as a town. We'll let him do that because he did a lot of research and development on that.
All right.
But as far as the 70-30, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I would say at this point, so the vast majority, we're at that 60-40. We've seen a huge growth to the 70-30 side. So I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but my guess is probably conservatively 40% of our clients are in that 70-30. And then
Oh,
you
it's
have the
yeah,
ones
it's
that
higher
are,
than that.
you have the ones that are really on kind of either side of the spectrum, or they're 65-35. There's a lot of that, but 70-30 is, again, our recommendation, and it's the vast majority.
Yeah, we haven't added up in a while, Tim. I can get back to you on that by a simple click of a couple of buttons.
You're not recommending going higher than 70-30?
No, not in your case. Not with your understanding and the way you guys are funding. You're doing a very good job at it. Communities out west that are funding $5,000, they have a large unfunded liability. Go to the 80, no problem. They're not gonna. They're trying to accomplish. You're not going to accomplish much by just putting $5,000-$10,000 in every year. So you might as well increase the equity exposure. In your case, I'm very comfortable with where you're at, 100%. And Tim, Mr. Chairman, if I could, if you did need money for any reason out of the OPEB account, we're not going to look at the equity portion. We look at the bond side of the house. If the equity market is down, we have the other 30% of the markets and the alternatives that we could pull out of. So it's, we have 40% of your account that we have access to cash to pull out. We don't have to pull it out of the equity portion if the equity markets are down.
It's down, yeah.
Okay, so I want you to know that you have options. It's just, if the account is down 10% and you needed to pull out $100,000, it doesn't mean you're gonna take a $10,000 hit on a realized loss. You're not. We're gonna take a look at shedding it from the account that was in the positive or in the money. And so it's not just, hey, the account's down 10, you're gonna lose 10 if you need $100,000. That's not the way it works, okay?
And, Mr. Chairman, the reason you were worried about the earnings piece is it's not statutory, that you were thinking only of taking it out of earnings if you ever need to dip in?
Right.
It's just,
But it's just,
I get it. It's like,
it's just nice to know that we've got this earning, because if we didn't fund OPEB, we wouldn't have that $1 million in earnings sitting there.
right,
So if we ever get to a point in the budget process where we need to find some money to help balance it, and that's a good place to look at some point, and just pull out some retiree premiums out of that. And that's what the OPEB trust is for, retiree premiums.
Mhm.
Hopefully we don't have to touch it for a long time, but it's always an option.
I'm with you.
All right, are there any more questions? Oh, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
Great presentation as always.
thank you. And I think Parker is going to address some of your other concerns that he's already put a lot of work into. So, and just for the record, we deal with over 200 municipal entities with OPEB, and Parker's been a great resource to not only existing clients or mutual clients, but shares his material throughout, whether they're a client or not, to really help cities and towns understand and get a handle on how to maximize and lower your unfunded liability. So he's been a great resource. I know he's not going to share that, but I figured I would. So thank you.
Is there anything you wanted to talk about on this?
Economic update?
No, this is more for your reading pleasure. It's a little bit outdated at this point, but really, the high points, the things we're looking at, of course, are inflation. I think, without talking too much about this, we're still waiting. Inflation is still too high. I think there's been a lot of news about how inflation's getting a lot better. It's still too high in some of, particularly shelter, housing costs. That coupled with high mortgage rates, I think there are some concerns in the economy that we don't think we're going to have a devastating 2008 type of recession. But in here, you'll just see kind of our views on, and the employment picture is really, really, really good. And that's been the saving grace of the economy. So we need some work still on inflation. People have maybe overspent, maybe have too much debt on themselves. You've seen a lot more delinquencies on credit cards and things like that. So I'm kind of talking all over the place, but kind of our point is we still feel good about things, but the economy might have a bit of a slowdown. That's different from the market. Market and the economy are two separate things. We're going into an election. That always causes volatility. But really, with OPEB, stay the course. But these are just visuals that I love them, so I go a little bit crazy on them. But I'll just kind of leave it at that, I guess.
Is there any one sector, as you look through that economic and market update, that you'd like to hone in on? I mean, we could talk about that all day. Kathleen specifically, she puts a lot of work into those slides, and we could talk about housing, inflation, anything you guys want on any of that. Anything of interest or concern, I guess, would be more of a point of discussion.
Well, before we let you go, you did make me think of one thing. Our alternatives,
Yes.
are we in a good position? Could we do more? Would you recommend more, less, leave it the same?
Right now, we'd like to see you at 10% total in your total, in the private and real estate. Is that what you're referring to, alternatives in general?
No, the real estate.
Yeah, so the private equity and the real estate, I believe it's right on target.
Fully allocated.
They're fully allocated to exactly the way we want it. We want 7%, we would like, and our recommendation is 7% in private equity, and then 3% on real estate. And that, just for clarity, reminding you, it's not on individual homes. There's less than 2% in retail. Those are the two big concerns on the real estate. But you're exactly where we want. We've added new holdings or offerings, I should say. So every time that when you continue to fund this, and next year we'll come back to you and say, we'll automatically do this and say, okay, you've added more money to your account, the equity exposure has increased, or your total assets under management has increased. We want to add another 2% position to that. As we add that 2% position, we're going to diversify our companies that we're using that we fully vetted through Kathleen and her team. And we will continue to come to you and continue to add those. Those are all within the IPS under the target rates. So we would come to your custodian and the chairman to present that to you.
Catherine, what are you seeing in commercial real estate going forward?
That could be a challenge. Yeah, I mean, I think we look at all. I think we're cognizant that all real estate it's going through a major change. I mean, we see that even here, and in talking to our real estate funds, what they are trying to invest in is very cautious. So that, of course, I'm not an expert on real estate, but the funds we talk to are definitely cautious about what specific they're going into in terms of commercial. Just for some, I keep talking about this because I think it's so interesting, but our real estate fund I reach out to, we have two funds all the time because I'm like, what are you guys investing in? It's a little bit scary to me personally, where we're at. And so one of the little fun facts that I found out with one of our funds is that they're investing a lot in data centers. So that type of real estate where you might not think of that as real estate necessarily, but I think it's important to find these managers who are trying to find opportunities in what you wouldn't really think of. So data centers being one where we may think everything's in the cloud, but there are these huge facilities with all of these computers, and they're investing in that level of real estate. So, to kind of answer your question, I think we're a little bit, we're definitely cautious to answer it
And do we
politically.
have a lot of exposure to commercial real estate?
No.
Okay.
No, it's mostly multifamilies in what we have, things like data centers, school housing, very diversified, different. I know I'm missing industrial. I guess we have
Industrial space.
warehousing space. So, but yeah, very, very little. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you again. You're welcome to stay and listen to Parker.
Actually, before we move on, sorry, I have a question for you first, but just in terms of the allocations we made last year, it looks like just under $1 million total. What was the timing of those? Is it throughout the year? Is that?
Now, we, from our budget, our annual budget that's voted in May, there's $100,000 from the town, $5,000 from the sewer enterprise. That goes in July. And then if we're gonna vote more based on our free cash certification in October, that's done at the October town meeting, and then we turn around and invest that at the end of October, 1st of November.
Okay, so really basically two times a year. And then just in terms of other towns, is anybody doing any kind of I know I brought this up before, but dollar cost averaging where they're putting it in over time? I think when we talked about this last year, the answer was no. Has that changed at all? Are towns taking a more conservative approach in terms of when they're making their investments?
Some yes, mostly no.
Okay. The ones that are doing it, are they managing that on their side, or is that a service that's provided?
We can do that for you, or you can do it on your side. It's both. We can set up I looked at my notes prior to coming here. Yeah, we did talk about it the last meeting. We can either do a PIP, which is just basically an auto debit out of the account, or we can transfer the funds over to our Bartholomew, put it into one of the other, create a subline under the trust fund called Opeb stabilization, and then we can draft it that way.
Do you have any kind of performance estimates that shows the difference of performance in town, investments that are going in over time versus one, just dropping it in when money becomes available?
That would be almost, I don't know how we would calculate that. It all depends on the timing too, of the dollar cost averaging and did they need it. The part that I like about dollar cost averaging just personally is just, from a political standpoint, It's just systematic, unemotional, right? You don't have to, if the market does drop 10% after you just put a large chunk in, you don't have to worry about it if you're dollar cost averaging it. However, you just don't have to worry. You just set it up systematically, month to month. It takes out the emotion out of it.
Yeah. So I'll just, again, I'll sort of support that as a consideration going forward, that as the amounts that we're contributing each year, continue to go up. The doing dollar cost averaging minimizes the effect of putting money into the market all in one day, right? So you're gonna take your investment, you're gonna split it up over time, and hopefully sometimes that investment's gonna go in when the market's a little bit higher, equities are priced more. Sometimes it's gonna be going in when it's a little bit less. The effect is over time, it should smooth out the ups or downs. You're not, especially if you're talking about a volatile market. The day you're going in, you don't wanna put all your money in on the worst day of the market, right? So we can't time markets, but dollar cost averaging is a way to sort of set up a systematic investment schedule that helps smooth that over time with, again, taking the emotion out of it.
It really just takes out the emotion out of it.
Yeah, especially with next year, again, being an election year, and with the second contribution being generally around the November 1st deadline, that might have an impact.
Not to get political, but right after, historically speaking, and no sides political, I promise. But markets can be very volatile up till the election. But once the election happens, and once the markets know who the presidential candidate is going to be, markets smooth out. So if you wanted to wait until after that happens, then that's fine, or right before that, in that case. So I'm not telling you what to do.
Might be an issue with timing this year, huh?
Yeah, I've made a note.
But so thank you. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is a presentation by our actuary, Parker Elmore.
Well, thank you for having me. Parker Elmore, Odyssey Advisors. We do your actuarial work. So we talked before, I just hand this out when Brian and Kathleen were speaking. Everyone always wonders, where do I stack up? So this is a percentile thing we had shared with MMA, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, whatever group, MMA. You guys are about 17% funded currently. So among the towns, you guys are about the 75th percentile. In other words, you're better than 75% of your peers. You're not as good as 25% of your peers. So you're definitely in the upper quartile. But, as I said at MMA, and I'll say it here again today, only in the Opeb context, and you go, hey, I'm 17% funded. Look at me, I'm doing so well. It's just a matter that nobody's funded. On the other hand, I was talking to a town yesterday has one of their committee members who's going, well, we've been putting all this money in, and they're like 37% funded. He goes, and we're still not taking money out. This thing seems kind of stupid. Why do we keep doing this? And I'm there, well, I said, dude, here's the thing. You started funding your pension plan until the mid-'80s, and that's still not going to be funded until, in their case, 2036. It's taking you almost 50 years to do that. In their case, 10 years of OPEB, you're 36% funded. Yeah. So it's all in how you want to look at it. I mean, you made incredible progress, but the problem is OPEB doesn't have a mandate to fund, pension does. So that's just kind of where we sit. I'll walk you through a quick presentation. Any questions, chime in, ask away. Don't feel like you have to wait on my account. I'll give you the quick 30-second overview about the firm. We've been around since '98. I've been doing this stuff a lot longer in the private sector as well, so we've been around for a long time. We work with, at this point, probably closer to 600 municipal entities at this point across the U.S. I'll be in L.A. tomorrow. We have offices in Connecticut and Nevada. We're in 37 states, 8 countries, so I spend a lot of time on planes. With that all said, what happened over the year? The biggest thing that happened, honestly, is, your discount rate went up. And your discount rate went up really, a lot of that has to do with your funded status. What that means is, listen, I don't agree with the way the GASB calculates your discount rate. I make that clear in every presentation I do. I think it's faulty on both the pension and the OPEB side, but this is where we are. Those are the rules. And so the reality is your discount rate is really based on 5 key factors, which are the municipal bond rate, that's gone up over the last couple of years, as you know, if you're trying to issue any debt, what your current benefit payments are, what the funded status of the plan is, how much money you have, how you're going to invest the money, and how much money you're going to set aside each year. Those 5 factors have different weights depending on where you sit. So the reality is, Kathleen and Brian mentioned, you get a higher discount rate if you invest more aggressively. Personally, I don't think there's anything to do with it. I wouldn't give you a 4% discount rate were it up to me. But that's not the way we play the game here. In the corporate sector, discount rates have nothing whatsoever to do with how you fund your plan. Whether you have a dime or whether you have $1 billion, your discount rate's the same. But these are the rules. So your discount rate went up. In so doing, that cut your liability about $8.2 million. Was mentioned earlier, unfundeds go up, unfundeds go down. I say this in presentations, and I don't mean it as cavalier as it probably sounds. I can assure you that we are wrong. I do not know when everyone's going to die. I do not know what healthcare costs are going to be in the year 2082. We make our best estimates as of today, but assuredly we are wrong. So just take that for what it is. But again, your liability, disclosed liability, not cash, went down by $8.2 million. And I differentiate the two between assumptions deal with when do we recognize costs on your balance sheet. And then we have cash costs, which are your actual premiums. That's real money. So, Brian and Kathleen get to talk about all the sexy stuff. They're making you all kinds of money. They're pretty investments. I get to talk about ways we cost you money. So mine's not quite as exciting. But with that said, we also changed the trend rate, our forecast of what future healthcare costs are going to be. Again, I don't control healthcare costs. They're going to be what they're going to be. You're going to see renewals in the short run are going to be higher than what you've seen in the last couple of years because doctors, nurses, hospitals, and the like, they signed contracts 4 or 5 years ago before inflation kicked in. They all got beat up on inflation. They want to get paid. Now, that will hopefully smooth out over time, but you're likely to see 8, 9, 10% healthcare renewals now. The last couple of years, you've probably been seeing 2, 3, 4. So you're going to pay for this in the next 2 to 3 years. Then we expect it to come back down. So your unfunded liability went from 30 million to 20 million. Again, that's the balance sheet. The income statement side on the next page, it's interesting, but again, in the municipal context, we're not doing earnings per share. Nobody's getting a big bonus here because our earnings per share went up by a penny. None of that kind of stuff. But I guess the number I would focus on really is the service cost, about $1.3 million in change. And what that represents is the value of benefits being earned during the year by your active population. So it's about $5,000 a person. And the reason I bring that up is if you think about it, if Joe or Mary or Ted works for you and they're making $50,000 a year, they're also getting a $5,000 deferred compensation benefit payable in retirement in the form of medical benefits. So their real cost is not $50,000, it's $55,000. So that's important to keep in mind when you hire somebody, what the real cost of that hire is. The financial statement expense, interesting. You put in $955 this year, which is great. To the question about what are other people doing, on the funding side, that's a hard question to answer. And I say it for this reason. And we're trying to work on a measure now my team is doing now. Because if I can say, hey, listen, towns on average are putting in $1 million. Okay, great. What does that mean? What's your grand list? What's your budget? What's the size of the town? $1 million for you and $1 million for the city of Boston. Not the same thing. So we're trying to come up with a measure. What I think we're going to do is how does your contribution relate to your service cost? Because everything else is kind of fungible. So in your case, you're funding about 2/3 of your service cost. So I think that's really the measure we're going to look at. So that way I can compare a small town and a large town side by side and give you some kind of a measure about what you're doing. Your discount rate, as I mentioned, went from 3.83 to 6%. Again, it's not a real number in the sense of going, the cost of the plan didn't change by a single penny because we changed the discount rate. It does make you look better on your balance sheet, absolutely. Will it make bond rating agencies happier? Sure. So it might save you money, potentially. But again, reality is cash cost doesn't change it by a penny.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, yes.
Service cost year over year changed significantly. Is that primarily because of the discount rate?
Yes. Yeah, because the discount rate, without getting too deep into actuarial math, the discount rate is saying, what's the interest rate I'm going to use to bring all the future payments back to today? And if you think about it, your active employees are the ones still accruing benefits. Well, your active employees are younger, so they have payments that are not due for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Your retirees, I like to say, as opposed to saying they die, I like to say they stop taking coverage. Most of your retirees will stop taking coverage in the next 25 to 30 years. Your active employees, you hire somebody at age 18 today, I'm valuing them for another 100 years. because I take them all the way through their working career to retirement, and we take them out to basically about 120 years old. So we're valuing a long time out, and therefore changes in interest rate have a lot more impact on those folks.
Sure, thank you.
Yep,
Do you really go out to 120 years old?
yes.
God,
It's a very small fraction, but it is there.
Keep
I
your
don't wanna-
retirement savings in the long-term investments, okay?
Invest in bonds, man.
I don't want,
Well,
I don't want to
good
live that
idea.
long.
I'm telling you. You wanna start transitioning.
That's right. So, we talked about the positive drivers, the discount rate saved $8.2 million, and the change in the healthcare cost inflation assumption changed to 3.7, but we're also assuming that more people than the prior actuary would do are gonna actually take the benefit, will elect to take the benefit. So that added 1.5 million back. Now, again, people are going to take the benefit or not take the benefit. I have no control over that. So Johnny or Mary is gonna retire and they're gonna go, yeah, I think these premiums are fair, or they're gonna go, no, I don't wanna buy it. We don't know. We're gonna make our best guess, but assuredly, people are going to do what people wanna do. So what is this magic concoction of actuarial assumptions we use? Well, here are the kind of the key ones. So the discount rate. What interest rate do we use to bring all those payments back to today? And again, so we did that. Okay, what's the probability that somebody you hire today is still here next year, the year after, the year after? Okay, that's fine. They make it all the way to retirement age. What's the probability they retire at 55, 56, 57, 58? Okay, they elect to retire. What's the probability they elect to take coverage? What's the probability they elect to cover a spouse? How old is that spouse? And then what are healthcare costs going to be from now until the end of time? Because we're actuaries, we make these things way more complicated than is necessary. We have a very pretty healthcare model that takes into account short-run inflation, GDP growth, real GDP, resistance points about when healthcare hits certain percentages of GDP and how that all phases out. If you said about 4.5% a year, you come to pretty much the same number. So we have a long 50-year table, and 4.5% a year gets you to pretty much the same number. What's involved in all this Opeb stuff? I mean, here's the reality. I tell everybody, medical is 98% of the liability. Yes, there's a modest group term life policy. It doesn't really matter. It's healthcare costs. That's where the money is. Your guys' active healthcare premium on average is $763 a month, and your Medicare supplement is $782 a month. Your healthcare costs on average, I'd say you're about 10% less than the average for the actives, so good for you. And your Medicare supplement plan's pretty much right on the average of what we see. So no real shock there. The funding comparison, this one here is a bar graph format. Some people like that. But again, we already kind of went over that already. The other comparison we use is, again, everyone can decide who their peers are. That's up to you guys. We try and find people of similar geography, size, location, town size, and so on. So again, I mean, you look at you guys have a normal cost per employee of $5,000. You are a bit higher than our statewide average of $3,900. It just tells me on average your people are a little bit older than our statewide average, your active employees, which means they're closer to retirement. Therefore, their service costs are going to be higher. Your funded ratio of 17% is higher than our statewide average, but compared to someone like a Lancaster, yeah, they're extremely well funded. Princeton, very well funded. Some of these peers around you guys are very well funded, and people always ask me, how do they get so well funded? And it's not complicated, guys. They pour in a lot of money. As people always ask me, how much money should they put in? And I jokingly say, I refer to the great English philosopher Billy Idol, more, 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 for those of you who know the song. So, we're always going to be in favor of more funding. But with that said, listen, I don't live here. I don't know everything that's going on. So if you tell me, hey, listen, we have an incredibly well-funded Opeb plan. Oh, by the way, our school buses can't run and we can't get to the school. Maybe Opeb isn't where the money needs to go. So we want a seat at the table in the capital budget, but we don't want to be the only people. So we just want to make sure that Opeb is considered when you're thinking about all the various capital needs of the town. The service cost per active employee is the $5,000. We break it out by function. It's not really terribly meaningful in your guys' case, and oftentimes the public safety is higher, which is really the point of what we try and show it. And that's usually because public safety employees in general have shorter working careers, so we amortize the cost over a smaller period, and they have longer retirements because they retire earlier. So what this tells me is I'm guessing your public safety employees in general are somewhat younger. On average, I would guess you probably have younger, lower service.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
The majority of all of our patrolmen are in their 20s.
Yep. And I'm sure you guys are going through, I was looking at a town the other day who was complaining, they were losing about 30% of their patrolmen a year just leaving because money. They can't afford to pay them, and so they're.
Yep.
And I was in a town a couple weeks ago talking about putting in Opeb, which is an unusual conversation. And one of the reasons was that because they're going, how do we compete to get talent? So these are the kind of conversations you have.
Yeah.
You know, everyone always wonders is, what's going to happen? And so on the left-hand side of this next graph, it's a 40-year projection. And, you look at your liability from 24 million to 94 million. And what happens is people throw up their hands and go, why even try? So that's why I really guide people to the right-hand side of the exhibit, which to put things in present value terms, today's dollars. And so you'll see your liability goes from 24 million, to 29 million over 40 years. So it's up by about 20%. So it's, my argument would be is you can make modest changes. You can be like the government and Social Security and go, wait till the whole thing blows up and go, oh my God, we never saw this coming, and make dramatic changes. Or you can be responsible and make modest changes over a 40-year period, and you don't fall off a cliff. Same thing on the healthcare trend side, on the benefit payment side. In that case, you're gonna go from 796 to 1,300, 1.3 million in today's dollars over time. That is a large change. I mean, that's about a 70% change over 40 years. The way in which you're addressing that is by funding the OPEB, because you're going to have an OPEB trust that you can use to pay these benefits so that the taxpayers in the year 2052 aren't going, where do we come up with all this money? Oh yeah, we have a trust. We can take the money out. So that's really a cash smoothing vehicle is really what that serves to be. So in the near term, in the next, 15 to 20 years, the numbers don't really, in today's budget, probably are not huge, but they will get a lot larger as a percentage of the budget in 20 to 30 years. But at that point, right now, we're projecting you guys would be fully funded in about 2050-ish. Assuredly, assets are not going to perform exactly as expected. Hopefully they do more. But, to the earlier comment about portfolio and, risk profiles, I mean, listen, we have one school district that's 100% equities. They're all in on equities. In 2021, they're up about 41%. Good for them. In 2022, they were down about 20%. In 23, they were up like another 20%. So it's a very volatile ride. Most people are not willing to tolerate that. They are, good for them. But again, as Kathleen and Brian mentioned, this is really 30-year money. So you guys can invest however you want. I really don't, I get paid the same, none of my business. But with that said, I said this in a meeting a couple weeks ago with a client, and I can say it more than they can because I don't have to worry about these things, but I go, listen, if stocks do not outperform bonds over the next 30 years, nothing we're talking about here today matters. The U.S. economy is bankrupt, your town is bankrupt, and nobody cares about your OPEB plan. So my argument would be, don't get too hung up in trying to go, well, maybe it should be 57% stocks or 59. I'm not saying you want to go to 100%, but at the same time, the people I see who I want to take down the risk profile are those who are fully funded or almost fully funded. Because my thing is, I don't want you to climb all the way up the mountain and slide back down the mountain. But you guys can't even see the top of the mountain yet. So you guys are still, you're barely at base camp. So we have a long way to go. And so to me, again, and I think these guys can tell you more about this stuff than I can, but for those who want to play the market timing game, I think the stats are along the lines of going, about 90% of the market's return is made in about 12 particular days of the market. So if you can just be in the market on just those 12 days, and you can be in bonds the rest of the year, you made a fortune. Unfortunately, I can't tell you those 12 days until the year is over. And that is inherently the problem. But that's really all I got. Questions, comments, concerns?
Anybody?
Of course.
There'll be an OPEB quiz. I'll be mailing it out shortly.
Since I'm here, I might as well
That's
talk.
right.
A few questions.
Yeah.
Some of this is, I'm sure, antithetical to what you do. But,
Sure.
But just to sort of play out a bit of a devil's advocate kind of thing. You talked about pension plans, but the difference between a pension plan and an OPEB plan is that pension plans are actually paying out recipients. Like you don't wait until you're fully funded until you're paying people out. We have actual retirees that are getting money out of this plan as we go. So one of the questions I think we've had internally is at what point do you use the money that you're putting away?
Well, I guess I can tell you, you're already doing that today. The difference is you're skipping one step. You have about $800,000 a year you're paying out right now in retiree medical premiums. And then you put another, normally say $550 a year going in. You could put $1.35 million, give it to Kathleen and the gang, and then withdraw $800,000 the next day to pay the premiums. That's exactly what a pension plan does. So you could do that right now, except for the fact that you've added administrative complexity that isn't necessary. So you could do the exact same thing like a pension plan right now. Now the question is, if you're saying, but I don't want to put 500 grand anymore, I just want to start tapping money. Well, in the pension plan, they keep contributing all the way until they're fully funded. And so that's all I'm saying here is you're really doing the exact same thing. The difference is you could do a pension plan pay-go and then fund the unfunded balance, which is what you're doing here. In their case, they're saying, well, we'll put aside the pot of money and we'll take it back out. Largely, that's because most pension plans here are regionalized. If you had your own system, Town of Sutton retirement system, it wouldn't have to. I mean, the law requires you do it that way, but mechanically, it's the exact same concept.
So you said it was like a cash smoothing plan, but the funny thing is, the way I look at it is, not really. I mean, today we're doing a pay-as-you-go program.
Yeah.
Plus, we're saying on top of that, well, let's also put away some money to fund kind of the annual
Yep.
accrual of
Sure.
future benefits, right? But the counter argument is, well, if I'm fully funding the pay-as-you-go system as it is, why take on the cash burden of trying to fund that thing? I could just continue to do the pay-as-you-go.
But the reality is, if you look over time, you're not going to be able to, because you can see those costs exploding in the out years. And is the town going to be able to afford in today's dollars, to almost double their costs 40 years from now? If I came to you as a town and said, okay, in the year 2062, OPEB is now double the cost of your budget as it is today, can the town easily absorb this past year? Yes, you put aside 900 grand. But if we said, hey, can the town afford, an extra $800,000 a year to go to OPEB every year? My guess is that would cause significant budgetary distress. Well, be generous about it. It would cause difficulties. The idea is to smooth out your costs over time, so that over time you're just funding the service cost alone. Right now, I mean, here's the deal, you and everybody else, much like with the pension plan 40 years ago, you guys are paying two bills. You guys are paying the pay-as-you-go cost, the stuff that should have been funded 40 years ago and wasn't, and then you have to pay your bills. So you guys are paying two bills. It's not fair, but it's reality. So the deal is you have to pay the past duty that somebody else rang up, and then you're paying part of your bill. Over time, the idea is going to be everyone's just going to pay their own bill. But you guys are in the transition stage, and you get stuck paying a portion of both bills. Now, is that fair? I mean, yes, you can try and go back and assess the people 40 years ago who didn't pay their bill. There's not a way to get them, and that's the issue.
So hypothetical, if you went back in time 40 years ago, and if we had thought about, in those days, the idea of creating an OPEB trust, and you were making a presentation to us at that point, would you not have said, well, 40 years from now, you won't be able to afford the pay-as-you-go thing because of what's going to happen with...
Yeah, say fund the service cost every year, and
yet here we are, doing exactly that.
Yeah, because if you're funding the service cost each year, you're not adding to the debt. If you think about it like almost like a mortgage, you guys have a $20 million debt, which is the past service benefits earned to date. Now you're adding another $1.3 million of debt each year for the service cost. And you guys are paying $800,000, well, $500,000, $900,000 last year. You're paying $900,000 toward the 1.3, plus you're paying another $800,000 to pay off the old $20 million debt. So you got a $20 million debt, you're adding another 1.3 side debt over here, and you're paying last year $900,000, normally $500,000 and change toward that $1.3 million debt. So you're paying off an old debt as well as incurring new debt.
So what you're saying is, if you have the discipline to put the money away, it's the earnings over time that help you build the fund in a way that...
Yeah, there's a simple...
So the cost at the end of the day, 40 years from now, if we do this and we stay true to the thing, the cash cost will have been offset by all the earnings that we then can amortize going forward.
That's certainly part of it. I mean,
Yes, more than that, because if we didn't put $500,000 in OPEB this year, we would have spent that $500 on something else. And then when we need it 20 years from now, we don't have it, because we already spent it.
yeah, I mean,
We hired another position, we paid for this, we paid for that, we built something, and we don't have that money. Now
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
just
we've
think
got a
there's
savings account that we're building.
I'm not really arguing for this, Tim, because I actually, and I just want to talk all these things through. At the end of the day, I do think there are some people in town that would listen to this and go, yeah, all those people who didn't pay 20 years ago, well, I'm that person today, and there's other things that we need, so.
No, and that's the issue, is the question comes down to is, what people will say is going, listen, I'm not gonna be here 20 years from now when the bill comes due. Stick it to that guy. And I get all that. But here's the basic problem. If you look at demography, lower birth rates, population, 1.7 right now versus 2.1 replacement rate, so we're not bringing in enough people. People, when you look at the math, people are moving to Phoenix, Miami, Texas. They're not moving to Massachusetts. So your population statistically is likely to be stable to declining over the next 20, 30, 40 years. The number of retirees is going to stay the same. If you look at the General Motors, Ford, and the like, you see the number of retirees dwarfs the number of active employees. So who's going to pay all those benefits? The argument is that John Smith or Mary Jones or whoever it is today is receiving services from these employees. They should pay the cost of these employees, which is that service cost. Now, yes, the issue about the past. I can't do anything about that. You can make the exact same argument about the pension plan. You guys are also paying off for the past there. And I don't hear people saying, well, gee, I shouldn't have to pay for the pension plan. They don't say it because it's the law. They have no choice in the matter. They may not like it, but the law says they have to pay for it. But the math is exactly the same. And so that's really your issue. But the basic formula to what you're saying about the earnings, I tell people all the time, it's a pretty simple formula. Benefits plus expenses equal contributions plus earnings. So your choices are either the benefits, you can change those, I suppose. The expenses are pretty modest in an Opeb plan. So you have contributions and earnings. Well, if you want to contribute less, the only way to solve that problem is to earn more. And that's why Kathleen and her gang are trying to get you to be a little more aggressive. So over time, you can earn more money. Individual years, those are a crapshoot. There can be years to go up, years to go down. I have no idea. But over the long term, the S&P 500 is a steady march up and to the right. And, if that stops happening, then yeah, nothing really much matters. But I mean, that's the reality. I mean, that's what we're all betting on.
So one last question, if I can, coming back full circle.
Yep.
Tim earlier said, if we find ourselves in a particular position where we've got to find some money from someplace, we do have money sitting here that we can use for its intended purpose. Yep. But ultimately, it seems to me, the argument to the town is if we have to do that, we do that. But generally speaking, the answer is we're really trying to get this thing up to some measurement of fully funded so that we can actually start to use it in the way that it's intended to be used, where you contribute the actuarial calculation of whatever the new cost is every year, and you pay out of it whatever actual retiree benefits are.
Yep.
So in that scenario, what we're really saying to people is, hey, this is a savings account that we really have to build for the next, would you say, 25 years or something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So in a perfect world, to your example, right now, you guys in a normal world are paying about $800,000 a year of old debt, if you will, putting in about $500,000 a year. So that's 1.3, and you're adding 1.3. So you guys right now are in almost a break-even situation. You're not adding to the debt. You're not really reducing the debt. You're right, basically, to keep things where you are, which is great. I mean, that's far, far better than most people. So you're doing very well in that regard. But to the point about taking money out, is I always tell people it's the in case of emergency break glass argument. So I discourage it as long as humanly possible, because once you break the glass, you break it every single year. But that said, there are emergencies. We have a common client. It's a school district where things happened, and they desperately need $1.5 million. And so we're going to go to the trust, and we're going to take out $1.5 million. I'm not in love with it, but we're also not a fan of bankruptcy. So yes, there are times when you need to go for the money. But if it's going, hey guys, it's an election year, and I really don't want to raise taxes, and we could take $200,000 out of the trust, I'm going to discourage that as much as possible, because here's the thing. Once you do that, I mean, it'd be the exact same, the corollary would be like your pension plan to go, we're going to take a pension holiday this year and not fund. I mean, you could definitely do that. Well, you can't do it under the law, but in other states you can that don't have the same laws. And people do it all the time, which is why they're woefully underfunded. But that said, but the issue is your rating agencies are going to look at it and go, okay, they stopped funding. They decreased funding. Is this a one-time thing or is this an ongoing thing? So it's a matter of, as I tell clients all the time, a funding plan is only good if you actually follow it. So I'm interested in your 20, 30 year, 50-year plan, I don't really care about. What are you gonna do in the next 5 years? If you tell me I'm gonna put in 500 grand a year in the next 5 years, and you do it all 5 years, that's great. But don't come to me in year 2 and go, oh yeah, we can't do 500 grand. Well, then why didn't we set the plan at 300 grand? If you did 500, everybody's happy. But if you said 500 and do 300, nobody's happy. So let's come up with a plan you can actually follow. And that's what the rating agencies want to see, is that you actually follow the plan you set aside. And that's how you get good ratings. That's how you show them you're serious. And that's how ultimately we solve the problem. Does that sort of make sense?
Do we know what that real break-even number is, where, you know, you've gotta add X amount over your,
Well, right now, your guy's 550, you get there in about 30 years.
okay,
But, you know, 'cause that's always the question is, you know, how much should I fund? Well, tell me when do you want to be fully funded? How are you going to invest the money? They all factor into it. So it's, you know, if you say, listen, I want to be fully funded by the year 2042, I can give you a number for that. If you tell me I want to be 100% equities, you know, they may say, what, are you crazy? But I can give you a number for that. If you want to decrease your stock exposure, it's going to increase the amount you need to fund to get to the same place. So they all tie together. That's why I said there's really these 5 factors. It's somewhat of a circle in terms of which one matters, because they all depend differently on where you sit in different places.
okay. Thank you, appreciate that.
No,
Thank you, Mr.
pleasure.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Parker.
Hey, thank you, appreciate it.
That was a great presentation,
Yeah,
appreciate
very
it.
good.
Appreciate it.
That was outstanding.
All right, we're gonna go back to the number 2. We have a set of minutes, 3 of them, that need to be voted on. January 18th of 2022, February 1st of 2022, and February 28th of 2023. Everyone's had a chance to,
Who's at those meetings?
oh, I can tell you, let's start with January 18th of 2022. Voting members were Dave Hall, Tim Harrison, and Lisa Lynch.
Move to accept the minutes from the January 18th, 2022 meetings.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'll take a vote.
Aye.
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 Do we need a roll call vote? David Hall, aye?
Yeah, got close enough.
No, we're not Zoom, so. All right, so January 18th, 2022 is accepted. February 1st of 2022, members present, Tim Harrison, Lisa Lynch, Dave Hall. Yep, just the 3 of us again.
What was that date?
February 1st. I believe that was
That was
the
the
presentation by KMS.
2022?
Yeah, February 1st, 2022.
I move to accept the February 1st, 2022 meeting minutes.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's accepted. Last but not least, February 28th of 2023. Members present, Tim Harrison, Lisa Lynch, Harrison McKinley. Okay.
I believe I was there by Zoom also on the 23rd, on,
Oh, in attendance by
February
Zoom was
23rd.
Chris. Yes, you were. Thank you.
so I can move to accept those, I guess?
Yes.
Since I was there?
I second that.
Okay, any discussions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Was it done? Anybody have anything under old business, new business? All right, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We're done.